This is episode 120 of the Your Next Chapter podcast, where Samantha Leith and I are talking all about fitting in versus belonging, letting go of perfectionism, building and practicing confidence, the 4 types of charisma, and how to break through the conditioning that may be holding you back from blossoming in your next chapter. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Well, hello there and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. Now, my gorgeous guest today, I have known for over 8 years, which is a pretty long time in the entrepreneurial world. When we met, there was just one of those connections and you knew that the conversation that had begun would continue forever. And in fact, it still is. Her name is Samantha Leith. She is a speaker and a coach, but really those labels are a little bit small to pin on Sam. Now, Sam is all about confidence and charisma and clarity and courage and a pretty good smattering of sex as well. This is a woman who's larger than life, has a gorgeous sense of humor and a big, big heart, and quite an extraordinary journey to come to where she is today as she paves the path into her next chapter. So I'm delighted to bring my very good friend and a pretty impressive woman onto the call today. Hey, Sam.
Hello, Angela. That introduction had me thinking about the movie Cocoon and us being together in 50 years on a cruise somewhere.
Well, maybe we will. You never know what's in store as these chapters unfold. But look, I was hugely delighted to bring you on here because we've been talking forever, but I've never brought you into the podcast. And I was thinking, why the heck is that? Because before we actually hit record on this, I was talking about how important it is to give our listeners, or the whole purpose behind this podcast is to give other women a glimpse into possibility. And I believe that is best done through the power of example. So wherever someone is listening to this episode, what I'm wanting them to do is to hear what's possible when we decide to back ourselves. And I reckon you're one of the best examples of that.
Well, thank you. I think partly, as I mentioned to you, I think my life up till now has been a whole lot of like tiny little mini flip books. And now I've kind of gone into my next chapter. So it's like, it was like these tiny little mini what's a mini chapter called?
I think we'll just go with mini chapter.
We're mini chapter, there you go.
That works for me. Well, actually, that's what it's wonderful to hear the background, because people who are stepping into their next chapters have got some exciting things to actually share in terms of their intentions and purpose and the possibilities for them. But there's always the backstory. So let us know, before you came to the spot where you are now as a speaker and coach, what was the background? What were those previous mini chapters? Give us a mini sort of summary of Sam's life before 2020. What's been happening for you?
I could just say I was a Gemini and it would cover everything, but that's probably too simplistic.
Yeah, got to go a little further, my darling.
A little bit further. I started life as a professional singer, so I got paid for my first gig at the age of 7, 50 cents for weddings and $1 for funerals. I've got no idea why there was a difference. None whatsoever. And I actually lived on a boat. So I spent a lot of time by myself, and I lived on a boat for 5 years. Told my parents I wanted to be normal and live in a house and go to school. So we came to Sydney, where I joined the Australian Opera and did lots and lots of performing with everyone from MC Hammer to Jimmy Barnes and Joan Sutherland. And then
there's a lot of contrast there.
We'll go back to the Gemini thing. And I kept having, all the way through, being told by people, being an entertainer is so hard. Everybody who becomes a famous entertainer is a really horrible person, and money makes you terrible, and so you should do something sensible and blah, all that stuff we get told. And unfortunately, because of how I felt about myself, I believed it all. So I became an accountant. Just call that another little mini chapter.
Actually, we just need to dive there just for a moment, because something that you just said very quickly, that you were believing what other people were saying, and because of the way you felt about yourself at the time, you listened and you sort of sort of toned yourself down. You turned the volume down, literally as well as figuratively.
I totally did.
Why was that? What was going on inside that allowed you to hear those messages and have them tamp you down? Was it an age thing, like you were still young, or what do you think it was that actually switched off your volume?
I think for me, as hard as it is to admit, I think I was desperate to be normal. And I had older parents. I lived on a boat. There was all this stuff that made me different. I was overweight. I opened my mouth and this incredible voice came out. There were all these things that made me stick out like a sore pin. Sore pin? Is that you know what I mean? What's the word? That phrase.
And both of us being Kiwis, both being born in New Zealand, the tall poppy syndrome that you hear about in Australia is very much alive and kicking in New Zealand as well.
Very much alive and kicking in New Zealand.
And then I guess we layer over that as well on top is that as a teenager, what you want more than anything is to belong. I think Brené Brown says it so well. She talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And we desperately want to belong, but we try and fit in. And it feels like perhaps that's what was happening with you. And then those voices that were very compelling at the time coming from your parents and other influential people, we just internalize them and go, oh, well, you must know better. Okay.
Absolutely. And I even now at the age of, I'm 46 in a couple of weeks, I can fit in anywhere. Throw me in with the Eskimos, put me on stage with a whole lot of people in suits. I'm a chameleon. I can fit in anywhere, but I absolutely don't think I felt I belonged till in my 30s.
It's a different feeling, is it?
Totally different.
And how do you, if you were describing the difference in feeling between fitting in versus belonging, how would you contrast those?
When you're fitting in, you're on your toes. So you're hyper aware. It's like your super senses are out. Your spidey senses are going. So it's about, for me, who's someone who comes across and is now very confident and charismatic, it's about molding, listening to what's going on around you, seeing what's going on around you, and molding what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're saying, what you're wearing, what you're doing into that circumstance. Whereas belonging is about going into those spaces and still being aware and seeing, but you fill the space with who you are rather than trying to shape yourself into the space.
That is probably one of the best descriptions that I've heard. Absolutely. So, and you started that with that description of being a chameleon before, and that's perfect. That's the same way that I feel about it. A chameleon, it's like, oh, who do you want me to be? Okay, I can be that. See, I'm patted on the back. I'm allowed to stay, as opposed to walking in there resplendent as who you are. And it doesn't mean that you are pushing who you are down someone's throat, but you're not apologizing for it either. I think Brené, love Brené. Don't puff up, don't shrink. Just stand in your sacred space, and that's totally what it sounds as though we're learning to do. It's so important, isn't it? That transformation from fitting into belonging.
And I think the funny thing with that is a lot of people, when they hear me talk about that, and I remember this particular incident. I was 18 and I was writing a list for my birthday party, and I had that one of those big foolscap pieces of paper, and I wrote these columns of my different groups of friends. And I remember sitting down crying, going, I don't know who I am. I'm a different person with all these groups. I had an academic scholarship at school, so I had my nerdy friends. I had my partying friends because I sang in bars. I had my opera, like all these different people. I was like, I don't know who I am. I'm fake. And now as I get older, I know I wasn't fake at all. I just showed different parts of my personality to each group.
And so that feeling of growing into yourself, which you say you hit around your mid-30s, was all those pieces came together and were woven as opposed to fragmented?
Totally. And also I stopped thinking I needed to hide part of any of my personality for a certain group. Like if I'm with a certain group of people, I like to play devil's advocate, I'll admit that, and, get in there sometimes and stir the pot a little bit. But
no, I can't do that.
You've never seen me do that. But I no longer think, oh, that's right, I'm with all the school mums, so I better not talk about sex. If that's coming up in conversation, I'll talk about it. Without worrying about the consequences of the conversation so much.
Yeah, so we don't try and shock our audiences, but we no longer are so tied to the approval of others.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a key one, isn't it? When it comes to this idea of confidence, it sits in that, or it comes from, it's born in that place of disconnection from approval seeking. Suddenly,
when
we
you actually go,
us.
I like me.
Yeah, oh, that's a surprise, isn't it? To actually look in the mirror and go, you know what? Took me a long time to get to that space as well. But it's like, now I can catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and go, hey, how you going? You're looking good today. It doesn't matter how I actually look, but I feel so different now.
Yep.
It's I've often said, for God's sake, someone give me some good things about getting older, because, bits start to sag and bits start to break, and I have so many injuries when I do sport. But there is the gift, the gold, I think, is in that feeling of accepting and approving of yourself. That's just, such a nicer place to get to.
And appreciating who we are and what we've been throughout those years to get to that point.
Oh, yeah. So approval and appreciation.
Appreciation's a big one.
I like those two together. Well, we went down a tangent here, so let's
Sorry.
just this is what happens on these conversations, which is all good. We follow the thread. But if we just hold on to that thread and walk backwards, we get to this point, I became an accountant. Yeah. So you taught then, obviously you were doing that as your way of life, as how you were earning a buck, but something changed, it sounds like, in your mid-30s, so about 10 years ago. What started to change?
Yeah, I went into the entrepreneurial world I knew there was just more. I knew there was more. And I'd always been a multifaceted person. So I always had like a couple of career balls juggling, as you will. And I liked money and I liked security of money, which led me down the accounting path. But I knew I needed so much more, and I wasn't helping people with that. Not to be disrespectful to accountants, but, it's a skill you can learn. And I knew with my caring and my feeling, and I wanted to help people more. So I went into the coaching world. So I started going down the business coaching realm and speaking on business topics like systemization and things like that. And then as that became a larger part of my life, I embraced the fact that, yeah, I have those skills and I can talk about it and I can do it. I have that ability, but all I've ever really wanted to do is talk about personal development. I'm a self-help junkie and have been forever. And it's ironic now when I catch up with people who have known me for maybe 20 or 30 years. And I had a friend over here a few weeks ago and she said, Sam, you were doing that between songs sitting on a piano. You would tell us a story and teach us something between, You're So Vain and I Will Survive. So it's nice to know that it's always been there. It just took me till now to really let it shine.
I see that a lot. I see that happen. And the same thing, a similar thing, only I would never try and sing. That would not be good. But a similar thing where we take our skills, like we look at, okay, I don't want to do what I was doing. I want to do something different. So you're in the next chapter, cycle of change, you're in that discontent, desire, sort of deliberation zone. And we take our skill set so often and turn that into a business. So with this accounting, with this very systemized brain background, well, I'll take that and I'll start teaching about systems and planning, and because it's logical and it comes sort of easy. I did the same. I was in marketing. And so I started a freelance marketing consultancy, which turned into an agency. But then something happens. That works for a while. There's no problem with it. It feels almost like it's a bridge into the new version of us, into that next chapter. But we can't stay on that bridge. We can't stay there, can we? We start to get glimpses of what we really want. And then we've got to have that courage to go, you know what? I'm going to let go of this that I know and I can do, but it's no longer fulfilling me. And that's when this new part opens up, and you recognize that because you saw, and this is also true, you saw that you'd always been in that personal development space. So it's just a case of turning the volume up there and turning the volume down on the other part, and boom, you're stepping into a whole new world.
I think a key point in that when we start, especially an entrepreneurial journey, based on whether you've been employed as a marketing person or accountant or writer or whatever it is, and you then morph into starting your own business on the back of that skill, I think so often people go into that next bit because they stop thinking they have to lead with their skill. They can start leading with who they are and what they want, rather than the tangible, I can do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I think that can only really happen when that that shift also happens internally, and we start to, as you said so beautifully before, not only approve of ourselves but appreciate all the mixture of life experience that's brought us to here. And we can look back at that great big mound of experiences and start to pull out the pieces that really lit us up and lead with those.
Completely.
Oh. Okay, so here we are in our mid-30s going, I'm going this way now, I'm going this way. So talk to us about the story as to what's brought you to this point now, because I've known you working into that personal development space, but suddenly it seems like this concept of the X factor, the being extraordinary, your message, your focus, your whole way of looking at the world seems to have lifted up another notch. So talk to us about what you've discovered there and what's important for us to know about ourselves.
It started for me with death. Like, as you remember, 3 years ago, my mother passed away, and she'd been living with my daughter and I for about 6 years. And I threw my fiance out, because that's what you do when you go through moments like that. Don't need to go down that story. And I kind of acknowledged that, and I talked about it in a cabaret show I did, that I had this phase of, although I had these moments of stepping into being more of me, doing the speaking and starting my own business and things like that, it was kind of like the numb years. It was still very much centered, my life was still very much centered around doing things for other people and looking after mum and looking after my daughter and looking after my partner and those kind of things. And when those two of those big components fell apart, I got this opportunity to go, oh, hang on, here I am. And these are all these things I want. And now maybe I have the space to actually investigate that more. And within that investigation, I started saying yes to more things. So I said yes to being a judge on a TV show. I said yes to doing a TEDx pitch night. And that led me to go, you know what? All of these things make me so happy. And there's nothing, I stopped thinking I had to look a certain way. I stopped thinking I had to dress a certain way. And I think it all came off the back of that really, I could say catastrophic in many ways, couple of months. And I was just like, yay, I'm here. This is okay. And that allowed me to show my X factor. And then people kept saying to me, how do you do what you do? How do you walk on stage and sing in front of 500 people or talk to 1,000 people? How do you walk into a cocktail party and start a conversation with anybody? I was like, I don't know, I just kind of do it. So I had to reverse engineer these skills that I'd actually always had and didn't realize that it was weird understanding that you learned to be confident, you weren't born confident, because I just always had been.
It had always been a part of your world. But
yeah,
if I just delve backwards there for a moment, because there's a really important threshold that you crossed when you actually almost woke up, when that opportunity for self-assessment and for reflection really came high when your mum passed away. And I remember the time. I remember all the stuff that was hitting the proverbial fan at that time, and it was a really, really tough time. Now, but what you did was you broke the conditioning, because the conditioning that we hit so often in society says, yes, we take care of others. That's what we do as women. And I'm definitely a feminist, but I don't want to be too much on my soapbox here, but it's like our default position for many of us is that we are conditioned to take care of everybody else first. So you had this window of opportunity where you could have closed those windows and gone, I'm going back in, I've got a daughter, I've got responsibilities, etc., but you actually allowed yourself to keep that window open and in fact jump out of it and get curious about what it was that was possible for you, that concept, that space opened up and you expanded that space. And we are the only ones who can do that for ourselves.
100%.
And I think that is the step there, that you gave yourself permission and then you used curiosity. You started looking at things and going, well, what do I love? What is lighting me up? That is that transition piece for all of us. to actually allow ourselves to get curious and start to explore. And my goodness, look what you've turned up, this whole necessity of reverse engineering. But you know, that those skills of the connection and the charisma and the confidence, which is such a big part of you, now you can start to share with other people how they can step into it as well. Because that's really the gist of what you're doing now, isn't it?
It is. And it's some of the people quite often think, especially the confidence and charisma piece, we can really overcomplicate it, or we can think that the only people that are truly confident or truly charismatic are larger than life. And it's just simply not true. Confidence is made up of these tiny, tiny little things that you do almost every day, like cleaning your teeth, that just become, dare I say, part of your habit. One of the most simple things you can do to start feeling more confident is to go up to a random stranger and go, "That's a really great skirt," and just start a conversation. It's not with anything confronting or scary, but just open yourself up. And that was one of the key pieces I realized I have always done. Like, I've always been that person that could go up to the woman in the supermarket and go, "Hope you don't mind, but I'm just going to fix your tag because your tag's hanging out."
That's one of the reasons we connected, Sam, because I do exactly the same stuff.
But it's funny.
My children are mortified. Like my children are mortified. It's funny.
But doing things like that makes you more confident. And you go, and when you say it to someone, they're like, "That's just ridiculous." But then you meet all these people who go, "Oh my God, I could never do that."
But isn't that interesting? There's a point there that I'm hearing, is that confidence is about getting off self. Confidence comes from actually connecting with others. And I know people will say, "But you've got to be confident to do that." But if we actually detach ourselves from the fear of any sort of reprisal and are focused on contributing to somebody else in that moment, then taking a confident move becomes much easier.
Absolutely. And it really is one of those chicken or egg things. Like, do you get more confident by doing those little things that are a little bit scary, or is it which one do you have to actually happen first to make it work? And you just got to do any of it.
Well, it's true. And I think, and one of the, quite a while ago now, people that I interviewed on this podcast was Russ Harris, who does the Acceptance, Commitment, Training and Therapy ACTS. And he very much says, and I've always picked up on this, is that the actions of confidence come first and the feelings of confidence come later.
Totally.
So what you've just described makes perfect sense. So it's just that, what was that book from many years ago? Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Yeah, but it's true, isn't it? And we can just start with little things, and then we can start, working on to bigger things. Because you actually said some people feel afraid of being confident. Why would
they do? It's again, I think it's because we get taught from. I love my parents, and all of us are going to say that because they may help us become who we are. But these things that we get taught from such a young age, like that whole confident people, they don't get too big for your boots.
Oh, yeah.
They've got so much confidence. Look at that ego. And ego and confidence are totally different things. It's not, being confident does not mean you're a narcissistic a-hole that's demanding of things in life. It's, you're just showing up as you.
So that's it. You have the confidence to be you. That's what it's about.
That's it, without fear of stupid examples. Like I did a blog post the other day about body confidence, which is a big thing for me. As you know, I've gone from, I've been everything from 135 kilos to 75 kilos, and that's just in the last 10 years. And someone said to me, I was going on a date about a year ago, and they said, don't be too booby. And it's like, and old Sam in her 20s would have gone, oh, okay, yeah, good impression, better not be too booby, because they've told me obviously he doesn't like boobs or he's boring, and whatever would have gone through my head. And new Sam that is confident Sam, goes, I like being booby.
Absolutely, and
that's me. If you don't like it,
that's who you are, and that's not censoring yourself in that respect.
Totally.
Mm. Actually, there's a thought that came up as you were talking about that. I ran a virtual retreat yesterday for my mastermind participants because, of course, we still can't hang out all together in quite the same way at the moment.
And for extroverts like us that like hugs.
It's hard. It's hard.
I say to someone, for kinesthetic extroverts, this is hell.
Well, it's slowly returning to normal. But I had one of the participants, lovely woman, Ruby Menon, who is in Hawaii. She gave one of the presentations about tiny habits, and really very cool book. BJ Hogg, it's on my Fogg actually is his surname. Apologies for that. But one of the things that Ruby talked about is that when we are creating habits, and that habit could be the habit of becoming more confident, of practicing confidence, you start with a statement of, I'm the kind of person who. So, for example, I'm the kind of person who prioritizes my health and wellness. I'm the kind of person who reaches out to others. I'm the kind of person who is confident in my body and who I am. And then from there, you create a habit swarm. So if you're a person who's confident in their own skin, what does that mean? Well, one thing that it means is that if I want to wear a dress that shows off my magnificent boobs, I am going to darn well do it, etc., etc. So I really liked that way of looking at things. I'm the kind of person who. It sounds like it resonates with you as well.
Yeah, I've written it down.
Yeah, it's a goodie, isn't it?
Thank you for that.
So tell me, what's the difference between, or tell us all, what's the difference between confidence and charisma? Because I get that we don't want to fall into, well, we don't have to fall into this belief that a confident person is like, really out there and on the stage. I mean, you can be quietly confident, and it's almost like a confidence continuum we can be on. But charisma, absolutely, to me, if I listen to that word, charisma feels like something that you've either got it or you don't.
No, totally not true. So again, the simplest way of distilling the difference between confidence and charisma is confidence is about how you feel within yourself. Charisma is about how, and I know you can't make somebody feel something, so this is where it gets a bit hairy, the line, but in a nutshell, charisma is about how you show up makes other people feel.
Okay. So it's like transferable in some ways.
It is. And there's charisma, a lot of people automatically go, oh, if we're going to think about charisma, we're thinking about Kris Jenner, walking into a room all done up and taking over the world as a mummager, clicking her fingers and getting what she wants. And there's actually 4 different types. It's been distilled into 4 different types of charisma. Ooh. And you might think, like, oh, that seems a bit weird. But, for example, kindness charisma is, you would think of the Dalai Lama. Like he has this centered calmness that he could say anything and you're captivated. You want to listen, you want to learn, you want to feel from what he's doing. Whereas you might look at someone like someone who's more on the visionary charismatic scale, and that would be Steve Jobs, it would be Bill Gates, it would be, dare I say, anyone that's ever run a cult. But they have this, they can use their words or how they stand or how they, even what they're wearing to make you absolutely buy into their vision of the world.
Okay, so that's kindness, visionary. What are the other 2? So
there's focus charisma.
Yeah.
So that's a very, people that have held in really, really high regard and respected, and whatever they say, even if you listen to them and you disagree with them, it makes you almost question, oh, hang on, should I rethink that? And Oprah would be a great example of that. Obama would be a great example of that. And then there's the last one is an authority charisma, and unfortunately this is probably one of the ones where there's, pardon?
Don't say it.
Don't say it. No, I'm not going to say that one. That's too raw at the moment. But this, and this I found fascinating actually, a side story, is 2 of the most authority-driven, charismatic people in the history of the world would be Stalin and Hitler.
Yep.
I was at Dachau earlier this year with my daughter, and hearing the tour guide, she was very smart, and she spent a lot of time talking about Hitler's charisma. And, not many people discuss it, but that man, when he opened his mouth and said something happened, he made people feel and think and do whatever he wanted in that moment. It's awful, like, because it can. The problem with charisma is if you're a narcissistic psychopath, it can be taken really badly, and I think that's why some people get a bit kind of fearful of it. They're like, "Oh God!" But
yeah. It's one of those words that almost we've given it a negative connotation. It's almost in that area for a lot of people of ego, and so it's really
totally.
It's so important, though, to hear this breakdown of how it could be, because yes, I think of the Dalai Lama and absolutely exudes charisma, but I love that categorization to help the understanding of how charisma can be. So
Mother Teresa is another great example.
Yes, another great example. So it actually makes sense. So one of the things that I know that you talk about is how can you feel charismatic when you're feeling a bit crap? How can you actually step into those shoes?
Oh, this is when I do that. I call myself analytical with a woo-woo rising. And it's mindfulness is a big part of it. So practicing some mindfulness techniques like deep breathing, meditation. When you're walking into charisma is one of those things sometimes it can be like a coat you have to put on when you're stepping in front of a camera or onto stage or going into a meeting or trying to have one of those conversations with your children that you don't want to have. And simple things, I don't know if you've seen the TED Talk with Amy Cuddy, a power pose.
Oh, yeah, the Superwoman pose.
The Superwoman pose. Tony Robbins talks about, I've just forgotten the word he uses. Oh, my God. He does like these incantation things and does like these jumping and things to get himself into a change of state.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it is that physicality that helps us get into that charisma zone. But more importantly, it's about thinking, what do you want everyone in that environment you're about to walk into to come away with? What do you want them to hear? What do you want them to feel? What do you want to happen? And once you're in that zone, again, like the confidence thing, you're not thinking so much about yourself.
Yes.
You might be a leader and you're going into a meeting and you've had a massive fight with your wife, and the last thing you want to do is go into this meeting and tell everybody that the company is being restructured. But you remove it from being about you and into, okay, I've got this team that needs to know what's going on within the business. They need to know that I support them and I'm here to help them and we're going to get through this. So I have to switch into that mode.
That makes sense. I was wondering, okay, so why do we want to be able to tap into charisma? Is it an important attribute to have? And you've just brought that down to a point. It's like, what experience do you want the people that you're interacting with to have? And actually putting on that coat of charisma so you can tap into that part of you, because we've all got all these parts. And
totally.
It's a case of weaving them together and putting the volume up and down at certain times. And so understanding, this is the GOSCOP, as I call it, get off self, get on purpose. GOSCOP.
Yep.
And so this is a GOSCOP moment. It's when I move into to give this speech, to facilitate this virtual retreat, to have this mentoring call, whatever the case may be in your world, to talk to your kids, etc., is that you want to be fully present and to be exuding that confidence and charisma, as long as you're not, leading a cult or wanting to take over the world, where you can help people step into that atmosphere of possibility and motivation and inspiration. And we can't make anyone feel or do anything, but we can certainly create an environment where it's more likely to happen for their greater good. So now
Absolutely.
I really get from this conversation the purpose that charisma plays overall, especially if we are in this personal development, business development, in this growth area of helping people be the best versions of themselves. So that works for me. So
excellent.
I know I've watched you over the last many, many days, like a lot of people have, doing your 365 days of Facebook Lives. Now, I'd love you to just share with us. I know this is a bit of a longer conversation on the podcast than usual, but it is very important. So this one, when we were together a couple of weekends ago, you expressed to me that there was a real unexpected outcome from committing to doing these Facebook Lives. Can you talk to us about why you started it and then what actually has happened internally for you?
Oh, look, if I was going to be really silly, I'd say I had a hangover after my birthday.
And you agreed to something foolish.
Totally. But the worst thing is I agreed with it to myself. Like,
you can't break that one then.
I have, as we said, over the last couple of years, I don't like the term blossom, but I have really blossomed. And one of the things in my business and in life that I felt was really holding me back was my, not fear, but my perfectionism when it came to doing video content. And I think it came from my performance background. I wanted to be in a frock. I wanted to have my face done. The light's got to be good, the blah, whatever. There's just this crap dialogue going on in my head. And I went, I have to get over this. Like, if I want to be, I have a goal and I'll put it out there. I want to be the #1 female motivational speaker in the world. And I woke up this day after my birthday and I went, I don't have a hope in hell of like getting in the arena, let alone on the finish line, if I don't get over this one thing. So I'm going to do a Facebook Live every day for 365 days.
And
then I had to do it. Yep. And it's been interesting. It's made me realize how much stuff is in my brain and in my heart that I was overcomplicating. And I thought a script had to be perfect, or I had to write the perfect blog post, or I had to construct the perfect keynote. And the reality is so I started with a plan of this is what I was going to talk about every day. And I literally had a spreadsheet with 365 days. That's going back to that accountant thing.
Yep. And can't take the accountant out of the girl.
I know. But right brain, left brain, which one's working today? And by the time I kind of got into a couple of weeks of it, that went out the window because life doesn't work like that. Every day something would happen that I would have to deal with, or I'd have to help a client with, or I'd see something on the news, or that would change what I wanted to talk about. So every night has been primarily based around my key topics. I'm a great believer in goal setting and the power of habits. And so they're kind of all interwoven into that general personal development sphere. And I've done them everywhere from on top of a mountain in Austria to in my bathtub. That one I had to restart because you could accidentally see a bit too much. And I was like, quickly, delete. But that was about self-care and the importance of, on a Sunday night, having a face mask and looking after myself. And it's gotten me extra clients, but I didn't do it, I didn't actually do it to get something out of it. I did it so I could get over this one thing I felt was holding me back. And oh my God, I absolutely have.
Oh, that's so good to hear. It's that concept that came through that we were talking about, was that it really helped you ground in, anchor in, own your worth, and that worth is not tied to perfectionism, that you don't have to have the makeup on, the hair just right, the perfect script, the perfect anything. It's the real you that we're craving.
And we know, like as I said, like you, an avid reader, like bookcases full of books. And the reality is I didn't need anything extra. There's so much within us already. If we were to never pick up another book or to learn something else, there's still a gazillion years worth of content that can be extrapolated out of our brains in whatever our area of genius is, because it's there. It's just there. We just don't tap into it enough.
So coming along, right alongside that, there is that understanding that everything you need is inside of you. There's never a perfect time to start. So start now and make like this the perfect time to begin. But that consistency, continue showing up for you, showing up.
And consistency was my word for 2020.
Well, you're certainly showing that one without a doubt. It does, and that comes back to what we were saying before about the actions of confidence, charisma, however you like to describe it, come first, and then the feelings come later, because we have seen and you have felt that blossoming of confidence when you kept showing up for yourself. I'm the sort of person who keeps promises to myself. That's what you were basically saying, and that has done wonders for that confidence. It's a chicken or egg thing.
That is honestly probably the most powerful thing anybody on the planet can do, if they're in a bad stage of life or they're feeling a bit crap about themselves, or even if they're in a good stage, but for 24 hours to honour the commitment or the promise you make to yourself. Because that 24 hours, and we do it with cleaning our teeth, but we, might have the odd night we go, I can't be bothered taking off my makeup. But that 24 hours of keeping a promise to yourself turns into 48, which turns into 7 days, which turns into a year. I've missed one day and it was because I had a terrible migraine. So my daughter did it and she was very popular.
That is perfect. So that is it, about honouring the commitment to yourself. And really, as we're coming full circle on this conversation, really that's what feels to me the most extraordinary thing that we can do. If we keep those commitments to ourselves and as that confidence and charisma muscle begins to grow and we recognize that we can do the things that we say we're going to do, then you actually start moving out of that comfort zone, out of that familiar zone, and you become more willing to just, try something a bit more risky, would you say?
Absolutely. I just don't know if I'll ever commit to something for 365 days again. But mind you, I was walking the dog this morning and thinking to myself, well, I've nearly done that. What am I going to do for the next year?
Oh, we'll have to have a big chat about that one and bring it in.
Like, what am I going to do for the next one?
Well, the last thing really that I would like us to focus on here before you let us know where we can find you in the world is, as an absolute committed optimist myself, and as one of my core strengths when I've done the VIA Strengths Finder and other things like that, positivity has always been number one for me. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that I did not know that there was such a thing as an optimist creed. I
thought you knew everything.
No, I've still got a lot to learn. But this optimist creed is really, really cool. It's in my hand, but I know that you have it on your mirror in your home. Could you talk a little about this, and actually, do you have it nearby where you can read it to us?
Yeah, I do. It was actually in the movie The Secret, and which I've never seen, ironically, given my love of personal development. But someone one day said to me, there's this thing in The Secret called the Optimist Creed. And I was like, the what? A bit like you, like, the what? And I read it, and it just was like a slap across my face. So I have this massive mirror that I hand wrote it on. And for anyone that knows me, I've got really bad handwriting. So it took me so much dedication to actually write it so it was legible, for starters. And it's written by a guy called Christian D. Larson. So I'll read it to you. So it's: promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind, to talk health, happiness, and prosperity to every person you meet, to make all your friends feel like there is something in them, to look at the sunny side of everything and make your optimism come true, to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best, to be just as enthusiastic about the success of others as you are about your own, to forget the mistakes of the past and to press on to the greater achievements of the future, to wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give every living creature you meet a smile, to give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have no time to criticize others, to be too large for worry, too noble for anger.
That's like just lyrical to me. I love hearing that. I'm now got it printed out. I don't have a mirror, but this is going on my wall. I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's a beautiful thing to be weaving in with your other messages. If we adopt this optimism at the core, this isn't Pollyanna. This is deciding that what we focus on will grow. So it's making a conscious decision to filter for the good, to see the good, to focus on the good. And that helps us grow in that confidence that we've been talking about the whole time.
And that it's never ending. There's always something you can prove. There's always something you can make. You can shine a light on a friend. There's every day there's one of those things from the Optimist Creed that you can impart in your life every single day.
Absolutely. I'm going to make sure that this is on the show notes. So anyone who's listening, pop across to the website, to angelaraspis.com, and go to podcast, and you will find the Optimist Creed there as soon as this episode goes live, because I think it's just such a dose of positivity, which we can all do with each and every day.
Oh, yep.
Well, my darling, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Your experiences and how you have grown, not just in the last 340-something days, I think we're at now. There's still a few to go. But also, understanding that those chapters, those mini chapters, which turned into other chapters as you moved through, and you really started to recognize and gave yourself permission to make these changes, to step into the next version of you. It's really inspiring, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. So where can we find you when people listening go, I got to check out the Sam woman? Where can we find you in the world?
I'm everywhere as Samantha Leith, so and that surname's spelt Leith. I don't have a speech problem, which ironically the number of times people have written down Leith is hilarious. So yes, Samantha Leith, and my website has everything about me. I'd love it if anyone wanted to jump onto Facebook, and depending on when this is on, they might catch the last couple of lives. Otherwise, you'll find me on Instagram, which I'm getting better at, and LinkedIn I'm working on.
There's always room for growth, as we've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
That is awesome. Well, thank you again, my friend. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And to you, my lovely listener, I hope and trust that there has been these wee seeds of possibility that have been planted in your heart and in your mind today as you're listening to Sam's story. And that idea that charisma can be a choice, that confidence can be a choice as you expand more and more into who you are, so that you can belong rather than fit in. And that doesn't just mean in your life, it very much means in your business as well. This is really dovetailing in with my belief that your business needs to serve you just as much as it serves its clients, as you serve your clients, and that the whole of you needs to be in the core of that business. We can't pretend. We can try and do it some other way or using somebody else's formula, but it's never going to last. Just as Sam has shared with you today, it's as you start to recognize who you are and bring the whole of you into the heart of that business, that's when it really begins to flourish, because you're not hiding anymore. So remember that expression that we use today, I'm the type of person who, and finish that sentence for yourself. And then start to look at what are those tiny, tiny steps that you can do on a daily basis that see you keeping that promise to yourself. And then who knows what's going to unfold in your next chapter for you as well. So thank you as always for spending your time and energy here with me today. And I look forward to speaking with you again on the next episode. Until then, take very good care. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.